Good morning, how are you?
Morning, this is Judge Dennis Craig. Thank you for coming here. The way we're going to proceed, first of all, thank you for coming. We just met outside, and my name is Michael Sasso, I'm the chairman. Each of the commissioners will introduce themselves. One of our commissioners, Amanda Perry Carl, is on the speakerphone, and she'll be participating that way. After the introductions, we'll give you a couple of minutes to make any opening remarks or statement you'd like to make. We'll then have approximately 20 minutes of Q&A, and then we'll have a short opportunity for you to make any closing remarks you'd like to make.
Very good, thank you.
Vince?
Good morning, Vincent Citro, the Law Offices of with Citro.
Craig Dyer, Public Defender's Office, 7th Circuit.
Andy Bardos with Craig Robinson.
Mike Sasso of Sasso and Sasso. Again, Amanda Perry Carl's on the phone.
Brett Renton with Schutz and Nolan in Orlando.
Petra Brownlee with the Brownlee Law Firm.
David DeArmas of Kramer Price and DeArmas in Orlando.
Your Honor, Scott Thomas with the Byrne Foreman Law Firm.
All right, well, it was very nice to meet everybody. I think the only person I know is Mr. Dyer, so everybody else is new to me. First, I wanted to thank the members of the commission for your service on the JNC. I know it's a lot of work, and I know everybody's busy with everything else. And I know when it comes time to do this, it takes a lot of your time up. So I want to recognize and appreciate the work that you do. All right, well, since I'm pretty much new to everyone except for Mr. Dyer, I just want to let you know a little bit about myself. I'm originally from Western Pennsylvania, mainly the Pittsburgh area. Went to school at Duquesne University, which is in downtown Pittsburgh. Went to law school at the University of Pittsburgh. And my first part of my practice was in that area. So I was there for approximately 11 years. I was out in private practice. Originally I was with a small firm, and I was a partner with one other individual, and I was a sole practitioner. And my practice, I don't want to say it like this, but I was a jack of all trades.
Sorry.
Not gonna, not gonna say the second part of that, master of none. But I pretty much did everything that walked through the door. I did criminal and civil. I did federal and state. Worked at all the state agencies, some federal agencies. Did some bankruptcy work. Did a lot of jury trials, and effectively, that's really the main theme of my practice. Is I enjoy trying cases, and that started at the very beginning of my career, and kind of went throughout. And I'd say the main reason for that is I just enjoy trying cases. That's what I enjoyed, and that's the way I practiced all the way through. So in 1997, decided we were going to make a change. We were going to move out of the Pennsylvania area, come down to Florida. So I came down, took the bar exam in '97. Took on with the state attorney's office in the beginning of 1998. And at the state attorney's office, I was there for approximately 13 years or so. That wasn't the original plan. The original plan was come down, work at the state attorney's office until I can find out the lay of the land, and then go off on my own again like I was. But John Tanner, the state attorney at the time, he kept moving me up, and so I pretty much stayed with the state throughout my career. Now with the state, obviously I was a prosecutor. Did everything that our office does. I think with the sole exception is I never tried a death penalty case. So with the sole exception of that, I pretty much did everything else. Did intake, did supervision of attorneys, managed the office down in New Smyrna Beach for years. And then ultimately, the part I enjoyed the most is Mr. Tanner had put together a system where he had trial attorneys, where he had the other line attorneys handling arraignments, pretrials, depositions, those type of things, and I just had limited trial attorneys that actually tried cases. And during that period of time, I was able to try cases not just in Volusia County, but in the other 3 counties of our circuit. Tried cases down in Brevard County on governor assignment cases. Did quite a bit. And the main thing I did too was, at one point I had a count of how many different judges I actually tried a jury trial in front of. And it was over 40 at one point. And also with the amount of defense attorneys that I tried cases against. And that count was something over 50. So I wasn't just trying the same case over and over again in front of the same judge against the same defense attorneys. I got to see a lot of good attorneys, a lot of good judges, and some bad ones here and there. But it gave me a broad range of experience. In 2010, I ran for a circuit judge position. Won that spot. So in January of 2011, became a circuit judge here in the 7th Circuit. And my first assignment was in Flagler County. And in Flagler County, I was responsible for all civil cases and all family law cases in Flagler. We only had 2 circuit judges. We were pretty much the chief cook and bottle washer for everything. Did that for 4 years, changed divisions, came down and was working at the annex right over here in a civil division for a couple years. Went back up to Flagler again in a criminal division. Did that criminal division for a while and then came back down here, and I'm right at the Justice Center 3 minutes from here, doing a criminal division. Now the criminal division I have now generally runs I have about 700 open cases at any given time, give or take that amount of cases. So I'm a pretty busy judge. And as a judge, I tried a lot of cases as well, with a lot of different attorneys, and across a broad range as well. Criminal, civil, different kinds of civil cases. Tried 4 tobacco trials and the Engle cases. So tried some complex cases as well. So that's my opening. That's pretty much what I've done in my legal career.
Judge, did you go for a run this morning?
You know what? I decided today would be one day that I wanted to be a little fresher for you, so I actually didn't run this morning.
So you're not exhausted?
No.
Okay, great. I saw from your application that you pro-hocked into West Virginia. Did you do that multiple times? That's what I got from it.
I would say it was for only 2 different clients for maybe a handful of times. It was a couple of times for one client and another time for another client.
Can you tell us a little bit about what was it like to do that? Was it hard to learn new rules? You're going in front of a client that's clearly important to you because you've represented them numerous times.
Right.
Like how'd you approach learning what to do in that court as opposed to, you know, a place where you feel more comfortable?
Well, generally what I'll do is anytime I'm starting something new, and when I was in practice up in Pennsylvania, I mean, everything was new. I was a new attorney. So every new or different kind of case, you have to learn and basically become an expert on that type of case. So I just handled it the same way I did with every type of new case that I did. First thing I do is crack the book, see what was what, talk with their clerk's office to make sure I was filing everything that I was supposed to file, making sure I hit all my deadlines when I'm supposed to hit all my deadlines, and would go down in advance and just make sure that I knew where I was going, knew what was expected, and kind of do a little research on what happens in those types of cases in front of any particular judge that I was appearing in front of down there. Now, never had a jury trial in West Virginia. All my West Virginia stuff that I appeared, all resolved early.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy that process?
I did. I have to say, and I don't know how everybody feels about it, but course, this was back in the day before everybody had a cell phone and everything else. So when I was in practice, I was the young attorney in the small firm. They made me run around to all the other counties. They did, on all their cases. I was the one having to do that. So I'm always getting out of the office. And quite frankly, I enjoy getting out of the office and getting away from the phone. Same thing with going to West Virginia. And actually, we were very close to West Virginia. It was maybe an hour away. But just like going to any of the outlying counties outside of Pittsburgh, I actually enjoyed getting away, seeing different judges, seeing how different attorneys handled different things. And I always enjoyed getting out of the office and away from the telephone. I know now practicing, can't get away from the phone. That was nice to practice that way.
I also talked to a pastor in the community who talked about how you reach out to lots of people from diverse backgrounds and ethnicities, and how you sort of made a name for yourself in the community for doing that. I commend you for doing that, and I'm wondering, do you think that's important that judges do that? Because I know that you continue to do that, if I'm correct, even after your election. So I'm wondering why, and if you think that's important, to what extent it is.
Well, involvement in the community, I think, regardless of what position you get in, and I know our hands get tied as judges, that you can only, you have to be careful with what you do. But community outreach is, I think, one of the most important things that you can do. I did it early on with an outfit called Spark when I was at the state attorney's office, because my daughter actually was involved in those kind of activities. So I got on the board of that, and we actually put in a lot of time handling those matters, going to different events, putting on different events. Did that. When my children were involved in sporting activities, I became a coach. Did all those things. But also, as far as the outreach goes, the one thing I noticed when I went back to Flagler to do the criminal bench after I was down here, I got to do the drug court up there. And of course, the first thing I noticed when I got to drug court is we had no diverse participants in drug court. So one of the first things that I started trying to work on was, look, I need to get more diverse participants into drug court. And quite frankly,
You talking about the kids?
I'm talking about the participants in drug court that would be actual people that pled into drug court that
Right, the
would
kid,
handle.
yeah.
Well, not kids. I mean, these were adults.
Was that all?
Or like
Okay.
diversion.
These were, yeah. But
Okay.
we had zero diverse people in the program. And they had tried outreach to try to make the program more diverse. I even know they put on a big seminar, brought somebody in from North Dakota to try to explain that. And I don't know, Mr. Dyer, if you went to that conference a few years ago or not. Really didn't give us much strategy as to, how do you go about that. But the drug court team reached out to different churches in the community, and there was some pushback. And but the key was to get a couple of diverse candidates in, because once you get a couple of diverse candidates in, then everybody else that you're trying to convince to get into drug court at least sees some faces that, hey, look, this is something that I can do without having any negative impact when I go back into the community. And by the time I left, I did drug court there for about 18 months. Out of our 42 participants, I think we had 7 diverse candidates. But it was a struggle to get, people involved. And Flagler had this great drug court team. They had a nonprofit corporation that followed it and provided services and everything else. And there was a lot of outreach into the community just through the drug court team.
Yeah, I said kids because I'm from Seminole County. We've got a very active juvenile drug court, and I had some did some volunteer stuff and got around it, and
Right.
it was
right.
scary. The number, it just was,
Oh, well, with the kids, it's even, I mean, it's scary because,
they die. I mean,
well, they do that. Now, yeah, unfortunately,
it's sad.
2 of my participants passed away. One that, she was waiting for bed space in an inpatient facility, and she'd been waiting for 4 months or so. So I wanted to give her an opportunity to get out and be on outpatient services until the bed space was available, because it was going to be a long time. So I put her on community control. Her parents were there. I asked the parents, hey, is somebody going to have eyes on her 24/7? Yeah, we will. And so I let her out. So I released her. Sure enough, within 48 hours, somebody drove to the house while the parents were there, made a transaction. You know, the dad didn't see anything. Within 5 minutes, he's knocking on the bathroom door. She's not responding. He opens the door. She's there with the needle in her arm. And she passed away within 48 hours of overdosing. That was pretty sad. Of course, that hit home on the rest of the participants, too.
I'll let other people, I just don't want to take up all of the time here. I have more questions, but we could do this all day. So I just don't want to take up too much time if someone else has questions.
Your Honor, I'm curious, this goes back to your private practice, obviously, but you said you enjoy trying cases, but the never case you've tried, you're bench judge now. What interests you in the relative monastic life of the District Court of Appeal?
Okay, you know, that's a good question. I had to think about that too. Because as an attorney, actually, when you're trying a case, it's more fun from your side than it is from the judge's side. And I actually thought about that even before I ran for circuit judge. And I thought, okay, am I going to be okay being the judge rather being the attorney? And then quite frankly, you know, you sit there as the judge and you get to watch the attorneys say, you would enjoy almost, and I kind of miss that a little bit. Same thing with being a judge now. If I go to the district court, if I'm fortunate enough to do that, you're right. Now I'm going to miss that altogether. But the way I look at it is this. Since coming to Florida in '98, I've pretty much been in public service. First with the state attorney's office, then as a judge. And I know John Tanner, one of the things that he said was, he said, the most important thing that you can do is do the right thing. So I got to do that at the state attorney's office. I strive to do that as a circuit judge. And now in a district court of appeal, I would get to do that at the next level that would actually affect a broader range of things, rather than the individual cases that I'm dealing with on one division in a circuit. I would have a much broader reach, and that's what I'd like to do.
Judge, just kind of follows up on that. You know, we've had a couple of openings, and this is your first time applying, and so I'm curious why now?
Okay. Now, I don't know if this is in politic or not, but what I've always heard was there was a couple positions on the 5th that unofficially someone from the 7th Circuit would have, I guess, a better opportunity, because I guess seeing diversity from amongst the circuits upon the 5th. And of course with Judge Berger, she obviously came from the 7th. And I thought that having no other, I like to call it juice, you know, from a political standpoint, having not a lot of juice, or I thought that my best opportunity might be when we're looking at maybe trying to keep giving somebody an opportunity from the 7th Circuit to get in.
I can tell you I'm not aware of that, and I don't think we, not to speak for everybody, but we don't put any credence in that. I think our goal is to look for the best person, so I'm sorry that was the impression ever given to you.
Well, no, I mean, oh no,
Sure.
I just thought that, and not even necessarily at this level, but, you know, at other levels, I know that there is talk that,
You mean the next level up at the
Yeah.
governor's office? Okay,
Right.
gotcha, I was gonna say.
not necessarily,
Sure.
yeah, and see, I've been through the process. I tried to be appointed to a circuit judge position. Actually, I put in 5 different times, was nominated 4 out of the 5 different times. But I always like to say that, you know, at the JNC level, I look at it like, okay, you're gonna weigh it more on qualifications. I don't know if I wanna say this, but maybe, from a political standpoint, not having, you know, not having influential people behind you makes probably a bigger difference at the next level than it does at this level. And I don't know if that's fair or not, or in politics, but that's just, you know, the way I've seen some things.
The only thing I'd say is that there's 13 counties and 4 circuits inside the 5th DCA, so
There
it's
is.
it's a lot of counties.
There is.
I can tell you, though, as someone who practices regularly in the Seventh Circuit, albeit more in St. Johns County than Flagler, in this process, I've gotten a lot of calls from people who want me to emphasize that there's nobody from the Seventh Circuit on the 5th DCA. So it is a subject of some discussion up there, yes.
Well, you know what comes with it, with trying to make sure that you have representation from the different circuits? There's an institutional knowledge that comes with it. And if you don't have representation from that circuit, you kind of lose that institutional knowledge with it. I think that's the advantage to it.
I noticed in your application, there's some reference, at least in the state attorney's office, where you did appeals from the county court to the circuit court.
Right.
Do you have experience and background in doing appeals to the 5th DCA? And if so, tell us a little more about that.
No, I didn't. All the appellate work done from the state attorney's office was handled through the AG's office.
AG, right.
Now, not directly, but, you know, if I had a case that was on appeal, that I had prosecuted or dealt with, I would speak with and work with the AG's office. But directly with the 5th, the AG handled all that.
Do you get involved in assisting with the briefs, or you just consult with them? Tell me how that
Not the
works.
briefs, more on the factual background, you know, talking about, okay, what happened here, or why did you do this, or, hey, why did that happen here? And a lot of times you can get a little more background doing the appellate work, kind of knowing the reason why a lawyer did this or that, or why something happened. A lot of times you can get that by talking to the attorney that tried the case.
Thank you.
I've got a totally different question for you. If you're asked on appeal to interpret a statute which has recently been enacted and for which there is no precedent, what weight or what credence, if any, would you give to legislative history?
To legislative history?
Yeah.
Well,
Staff analysis, white papers, and all that stuff.
well, first, I'm going to look at the language of the statute. And I think the first rule really needs to be follow the plain language. But if something can be read more ways than one, or if there's any ambiguity, then certainly if there's no case law to fall back on, I'm gonna go ahead and look at the legislative intent to see what was done relative to that. But generally, that'd probably be after I try to interpret the plain language first.
Fair enough.
Mayor, I want to ask you about your the federal case that you noted as one of your significant ones. What were the 2 elements that the court removed? The government did need to prove both.
You know, when I was putting my application together, I thought to myself, somebody's gonna ask me that. And what it had to do with the gentleman that I defended, he would be somebody that you would effectively call a tax protester. And I don't know if you know anybody that was a tax protester.
I met one or two.
They cite a bunch of old Supreme Court cases and say, you know, paying taxes is unconstitutional and everything else. And what this guy had done was, he didn't just not file things. He would just file a lot of paperwork with a bunch of old cases listed on it and say, I don't know yet, I don't know yet money. So the two elements had more to do with intent. And one of the elements had more to do with not disclosing information, and the other one was an intent to basically to defraud. And I know that's not the technical term because it's been so long.
That's okay,
But effectively, he didn't disclose everything he should have disclosed. But his intent was there because he had put his intent on the filings that he had filed. I kept telling the judge, look, it has to be both, not one or the other. We were gonna lose if it was just the one, because we were losing on that element. But I told the judge that all the way through, and the judge, I keep raising it over and over again. The judge would just sit up there and he'd go like this, he'd just shake his head. And I kept saying, finally, we're in the charge conference at the end of a week-long trial. And he says to me, he says, all right, he says, give me your best case on that. All right, so I give him my best case on that. He goes back, takes a recess, he comes back out, and he says, you know what, Mr. Craig was right. And then that's the way it went to the jury, that
So
both elements had to go instead of one or the other.
as a sitting judge, have you had a similar experience with a litigant, where you were convinced the answer was A, and in the middle of the trial, the litigant convinced you it was B? And if you would, tell us about that.
You know, I can't, that's a good question. I'd say it more happens along the lines of when I'm not convinced one way or the other. And one attorney convinces me in a way that, I thought I probably wasn't leaning towards. But to be quite frank, I mean, I know I've sat on the bench where I have been swayed back and forth as the case goes on, and even as arguments go on, that, you hear from one side and it's like, okay, and then you hear from the other side and get swayed, then it goes back and forth, and you don't decide until the very end. But what I try to do is, I'm a little more proactive. I'll ask, even as a judge, if I'm not sure what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna ask. And I'm gonna ask the attorney a question. If I have a question where I think there might be a hole in the attorney's theory, I'll ask that question. What about this? And let the attorney tell me why that's not a problem, or why it is a problem, that we can distinguish it because of a different reason. So I actually have quite a few discussions with attorneys going over issues that I'm not sure which way I'm gonna roll on.
Judge, that concludes the Q&A section of our process, and I'd ask you to make any closing statements or comments you'd like to, Commissioner, consider.
Okay. All right. In my opening, I told you about my legal experience and everything else. But I've been around a long time, been a lawyer for 33 years and had all that legal experience. But I've also had a lot of personal experience too in my life. I've gotten involved in community service, worked with a lot of people there, had a lot of tragedies occur within my family, had a lot of learning experience, particularly with my child that had some very serious medical issues. And during her life, we went from one medical crisis to another, spent probably, if you put it all together, years in the hospital. Spent a lot of time over in Arnold Palmer Hospital at the Ronald McDonald House over there. Learned how hospitals work, learned how doctors work, learned how to be an advocate for your child, those types of things. Their life experiences that that I have that go along with the legal experience that I have. And that's something that I bring with me. I bring with me when I'm in drug court, when I'm doing violation of probation hearings. I don't just bring my legal experience, I bring my personal experience. And like I said, I've enjoyed the working for public service, first with the state attorney's office, then as a circuit judge. And if you'd have me, I'd like to take a shot at the next level. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Alright.
coming.
Okay, thank you.
for your service.